Hey guys, Aaron Miles here with On Tilt Gaming. Going to be bringing you the spoilers so far from Return of the Dragon Emperor. Going to go in order of blue-green, then green-red, and then blue-white. As you can see up here, by the 26th, we've seen about a quarter of the set so far. We still haven't seen black-red or black-white, but we'll get to those as they come out. So, I'm going to waste no time getting straight into the Kaguya ruler. There she is. So she judgments for 0 first off, which is usually a good sign that it's going to be a playable card in the format. You can only do this if a treasury item was put into your field this turn, so we're going to see the return of like the treasury item mechanic. She energizes for blue or green. It's not blue and green. I went back and checked the reminder text on the Lel rulers, and they all say they have the two colors next to each other, and then the reminder text that says or. It's not both. If she energized for blue-green, that'd actually be kind of insane. Get to play 3 drops on turn 1. But yeah, all the new rulers, they don't have the reminder text, but they do only energize for one or the other. And then, once per turn for 0 mana on your turn, reveal the top card of your deck if it's a treasury item. So we realize that the deck's going to be pretty treasury item heavy, which we're going to get into later. And then her J ruler side does like 16 things based on your treasury items. And a few of them are pretty good effects. For example, her getting barrier at 3 or more treasury items so she can't get Black Moonbeamed. The one for the -2 is irrelevant. Producing mana is good, drawing a card is good, returning a Resonator to its owner's hand, turning her into a 15/15 flyer, which will definitely have barrier because if you're tapping 5, then you obviously control 3, so she'll be a 15/15 untargetable flyer, which is always pretty good. In the meantime, she doesn't have the text can't battle because she can turn into a 15/15 flyer, so you can actually attack her, although it won't do anything. Or at least that's how the rules work currently. They might change that when the new stuff comes, when the rules update. So we're going to start with the core of the deck, which is the Kimono. So you can play 12 of this card in a deck. I'm not going to bother reading through the cards. You guys can read them as they're on screen. But so we get introduced another win condition, where you can attach 12 of these to a Resonator. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't even know if the Kaguya deck is going to play 12 copies of this card, because once you get 6 of these onto a Resonator, you're giving it plus 36, plus 36, and if you can't win the game with that, there's not a lot of hope for you. As I'm sure you're still playing, you have to be playing Resonators in the deck because you have to attach these to something. So I think this is a pretty interesting strategy. I definitely don't think it's as bad as some people do, and then this card's actually bad. It's like a worse Horn of the Sacred Beast, although it does count as a treasury item if you need to throw another 1-drop treasury item on the field, but I seriously doubt it. I don't like that card a whole lot. What else? So there's the Moon. That says your other additions can't be destroyed. Pretty good. Definitely something we needed in a format where Heavenly Gust is running around wild. I like this card not just in the context of the blue-green archetype, but as a card in general. And there's this guy. I like this guy. When he enters your field, search your deck for a treasure item, and when he dies, put a treasure item with a total cost 3 or less in your hand. Paying 3 mana for a 5/5 seems like a lot, but I would assume that this deck is going to be playing a lot of ramp to kind of get into this stuff, not to mention, once you actually start getting out the additions, then you have the Kaguya ability to produce mana. So it's very possible that this deck's going to play a lot of like expensive cards and not really worry about the costs of them. So you're going to see their cards be overcosted a lot. And this is one example. You don't care so much about the body, you kind of want this thing to die, although it would be better as a 6/6 so that you actually feel like you're doing something when you're attacking with it. It doesn't die to one space-time anomaly. But overall, it's like an okay card, I guess. Then there's the bird. There's the bird. So whenever he becomes rested, you rest a target Resonator, which is actually pretty decent for not dying, because when he blocks or attacks, he gets to rest something. It's kind of like attacking with Lumia in the current format, where like you get to flicker one of their blockers so he can't do it, and this gets to do the same thing. So not an awful target to throw your treasure items onto, although I'm not sure if this is going to make the final cut. I'm not sure how many of the actual blue-green cards are going to go into the blue-green Kaguya deck. It's very possible that a lot of Alice Cluster and previous Lapis Cluster cards go into that instead, but you still have to fill out the archetype with something, so it's not a bad direction to be taking it. Especially since all of these cards, like the Moon also gives something -200 attack when it gets rested. So it's just being flavorful. Not a great card, but And then I think that's all of them except for the card we had seen previously, which is this one, Door of Time. So this is one of those cards we got spoiled a long time ago with the black-red J ruler, which I won't be covering because we don't have any of the other black-red cards, except for that spoiled dragon thing, but he's not on the database yet. So this card says take an extra turn after this one unless your opponent pays X, and if you do, at the end of that turn, you lose the game. This card's actually probably pretty easy to get off your extra turn with because of how much mana you seem to be able to produce with the Kaguya deck. It's just a matter of... I mean, this card could definitely be a complete blowout if your opponent taps out for a turn and then you're like, oh, take a turn, and then Door of Time for 1 mana. Like, you just pay 3 mana to take an extra turn in a ramp deck. And then you do something with the rest of your mana, you build up more kimonos, you summon a guy, and then on your next turn you just swing with the guy attached with a bunch of kimonos. So this is definitely a card I think we could see play in the Kaguya deck. Then we go on to green-red. This guy, I don't really like this guy a whole lot, as most of you are starting to realize. I don't like things that die to Tama. He only has 100 defense. I should actually look at the ruler first. But this guy doesn't really fit into the ruler anyway, so he's whatever. I don't like him a whole lot. So she's got Resonance, Fire Magic Stone, dude gains Swiftness, Wind Magic Stone, someone gains Flying, which is a little slow. You generally, in an aggro deck, which is what this archetype seems to be filling out as, you don't want to play cards and then call a stone, you want to play very on curve. This definitely has a lot of potential to get punished by Wall of Wind if you get greedy with your Resonance abilities. Although the Flying one is much more relevant, because you get to play something and then like have something already on the board gain Flying. Having something already on the board gain Swiftness is irrelevant, so the first ability is mostly irrelevant, this one, and then the second one. But she does flip for only 2 mana, and then she's a 10/10, so it's pretty nice. And then when she enters your field and attacks, you either put a creature on the bottom of your deck, and then reveal the top card of your deck and put a creature into play, or draw a card, depending on what you revealed, or cycle a stone, which we're going to see is actually pretty good for her. And then the God's Art, you recover her, you Pumpkin Witch, and you can only do that if a Fire Magic Stone and a Wind Magic Stone were put into your field this turn, which I believe means one of each, not a dual stone, which would mean that it's really only easy for you to get her off the turn that she summoned when she gets to cycle a stone and then gets to attack if you have Levitine. All in all, her God's Art is a little difficult to use if it works out so that you have to have 2 stones enter the field this turn, unless you play the Fire Resonator guy first, but that also seems a little slow. Although you will get to attack with them, but paying 2 mana just to activate your God's Art and then give it Swiftness Flying. It's not bad. It's probably going to be the easiest way to activate it, and you probably want to play that card anyway, for a couple of reasons, but actually no, I really can't think of a whole lot of reasons to play that card in this deck other than activating the God's Art, but we'll get to him in a second. Where is he? Just to give you all context, this guy. Treat him as a Fire Magic Stone. This card doesn't actually do a whole lot for you in the Prisia deck, except for let you activate your God's Art the turn you called a Windstone, and then you play him, and bada bing, you can God's Art. He can attack for 6 with Flying. He's a little more interesting in Sylvia decks, where he does gain the ability to tap for green, because he's a Fire Magic Stone, and Sylvia gives your Fire Magic Stone tap for green. I believe Blazer will also let him tap for red, but that's about where his similarities to Magic Stone stop. So I don't really like this card a whole lot, but I see where it does have a place in the green-red deck if you're trying to go for the Prisia God Art. What else is there? Let me do the Resonators on this first. I already talked about that guy, I don't like him. This bird. So this bird essentially replaces itself when when it dies, when it leaves your field for a non-field zone, you basically search your deck, or flip through the top cards of your deck until you get a Resonator and put it in your hand. It doesn't have Swiftness, but you can give it Swiftness with the Resonance Firestone, so like on turn 4, you play this card, and then you rip a green-red stone, and it can attack and fly. And then if you cycle it with the Kaguya, then you get to put you would search your deck for the Resonator first, I believe. I think you might actually get to choose the order. I'm not 100% sure. It's not something I'm thinking super hard about right now. But you'll get the 2 abilities. It synergizes with Prisia is what I'm trying to tell you. But I'm not sure it's super great outside of that. it's not a super aggressive card as it doesn't already have... Things that don't naturally have swiftness aren't generally super aggressive cards. We'll get to the spell after Mariabella, who... I don't like this card really at all. It's 4 mana for a 10/10. You're pretty much never going to get to use her first ability to search your deck for a non-magic stone unless... or a non-special magic stone unless you're playing either Blazer or Sylvia. Because I don't think you might just play 2 red stones as your off colors for Prisya. Green stones are better for her though, as the Wall of Wind effect on her is better than the deal 5. I mean, the deal 5's not bad either. It definitely adds up and lets you kill blockers. At 2, you're pretty much killing anything. And it is target J Resonator, so the fire resonance is extremely relevant. I just don't know how often you're going to be getting that after you play this card, as she is 4 mana already. That's pretty top end for a green-red deck. You generally don't want to be calling a whole lot of stones after that. You want to flip your Prisya, start beating them in. So although it is a very strong card in that aspect, I think it's just a little bit too slow for what the deck's going to be trying to do. And then the modal spell. So if I remember correctly, this is choose one or both. It's a modal spell, and it is one of your resonators fights your opponent's resonator, and every time one of your J resonators kills an opponent's J resonator, you call a stone this turn. So that could potentially be a lot of ramp coming in for you if, you know, you've got like Tamas and they've got elf tokens and things like that. It can force your opponent to clear off their board if you play this, and then they like sack everything to Levantine so that you can't call a shit ton of stones. And it does have quick cast, which I do like. I actually don't hate this card. I think the ramp could be extremely relevant if you're going to have a big turn to blow off. And I don't think this is only relevant in the green-red decks. I think you could play this in like Lumia if you have out like a Prisya, a fight Prisya, and they have like a tapped mana dork, then you could be like, yeah, play this, get the stone ability, like attack your mana dork, flick your Prisya, kill another mana dork, get 2 stones off of that. I don't think that's actually the direction that deck's going to take, but I do really like this card for its potential for ramping. And it's 3 mana, which is not... That's about like how much you want to be paying for a big ramp spell. At that point, it's not too late in the game. You can get up to like 5 or 6 mana off this card pretty easily. And then I think that's all the green-red cards. Oh, the stone. So when the stone leaves the field, you draw a card, which is obviously very, very good for what Prisya wants to be doing. And outside of that, it's a shock rock. Like you play shock rocks as your 4 other stones. Sure beats the shit brick. So then we go into, I don't think I missed anything, go into blue-white. So we'll start with that Ruler Million. Yeah. So Judgment 7, which is garbage, but he pays 1 less for each 4 dragon power counters on him, so you're like, oh, he must build those up pretty quickly. And it turns out whenever you roll a dice for force, you put a dragon power counter on him, so you're like, okay, he costs 2 mana to flip after I have rolled 20 dice with the force mechanic. Because that's 5 times 4, and that's how basic math works. Yeah. And then his J-Roller side, as he enters your field, you roll a number of dice equal to how many dragon power counters were on him, and then the result of those is how many +1/+1 counters he gets on him. And then when he enters your field, if there are 40 or more +1/+1 counters on him, destroy all J resonators your opponent controls. Which seems pretty easy for him to do. So obviously that's good. I think in general, I'm trying to figure out how much you're generally going to have on him when you flip him versus the chance of getting over 40 with that. That's some math I'll do as we get closer to release for this set. And looking at the resonators for him. I actually like this card a lot. I think that the blue-white archetype seems like kind of a slow beat aggro deck that doesn't lose to Bear Magic. Because this guy's pretty much going to meet your 6/6 vanilla standard. On average, I like to look at the averages of these cards. So this guy's going to be a 7/7 or an 8/8 on average. Which is pretty good for 2 mana, especially if it can't get Bear Magic, because Bear Magic doesn't overwrite +1/+1 counters. And then obviously he synergizes with Millium. I think all the new cards force. Is that the only one up there? Yeah. Go down to this guy. I like this guy as well. Oh no, this is a chant. I don't like this guy as much. If it was a guy, I'd like him. But you force 1, and you put that many +1/+1 counters on up to 2 resonators. I actually really don't like this card because it's not quick cast, so it's not a good combat trick. And it doesn't have a body attached to it, so 2 mana at sorcery speed to do this. Like, it's not something you're going to play on turn 2 because you're not going to have 2 guys on turn 2. So I think it's a little bit too slow and just doesn't do enough. Are those really the only 2 blue-white cards? Was everything else just mono-colored? Wow, I didn't realize that. Huh. Okay, well, this one, essentially a better version of the other one, except it's an Ancient Magic as well. So now we have black and white Ancient Magics that are not currently castable with any, so we would, assuming, we're kind of assuming that the black-white ruler is going to be an Ancient Magic ruler, which I believe we had heard. I don't remember if I just heard this or if everybody heard this, but in CFC I remember hearing that we would get another Ancient Magic ruler, and he would work a little bit differently than Mars and Mercurius did. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm really excited for the black-white spoilers. As I talked about in my Vingolf ruler preview video, I'm really excited for black-white. So what this card does is it's quick cast, so it's already better than the other one. It's white and 1, so it's better than the other one. And you force 1, and target J Resonator gets +X until end of turn. And if it's a Dragonoid, recover it. So this card's pretty bad. I talked in the Vingolf set review about what you need to be a good combat trick, and you either need to have Remnant, do something else, or give your creature barrier. This does something else, recovering it if it's a Dragonoid. Not super relevant in most decks. I understand that you get to untap and then attack again with your buffed creature. I don't know how super relevant that's going to be. So like as in general as a combat trick, it like does something else a portion of the time, and then it doesn't have Remnant, doesn't give barrier. It doesn't give +1/+1 counters, so your guy still loses to Bear Magic. So not a great combat trick. Then you have, I'll save that one for last because that card's broken. Tiny Alabaster Drake. This card sucks. It doesn't die to Tama, but when it attacks it does get force 1 to roll a die, but so you can deal anywhere between 200 and 700 damage, but it just dies to bow, so it's kind of irrelevant. I don't like this card at all. And then this card. So when it enters your field, you either put a target Resonator or a target Dragonoid with total cost 2 or less into your field, or if your ruler is Astral, heal it, and then other Ancients and Dragonoids you control get +2/+2. I think I like this card as long as this guy's a Dragonoid, and he's a Dragonoid. So yeah, I like this card. I think it's really good for what the Millium deck wants to be doing. It gets to revive your 2-drop that is somewhere between a 5/5 and an 8 and a 10/10, I believe. Yeah, and then gives him +2/+2 as well, and it meets your vanilla standard for a 3-drop. So I think this card's really good for the deck, and then being able to heal your Astral Ruler is kind of insane. I'm actually really worried about this in Val 2, because Val 2 is playing Whitestone, so it's very easy for them to cast this. And the ability to just, you'd probably play like 3 or 4 of this in Val 2, if that's the case. I don't know Val 2 super well. You don't have a way to search it, so you probably won't, you could hydro it, so maybe you only play like 2 or 3. But I definitely am worried about this card in Val 2. I really like what it does for the Millium deck, but Val 2 is my bigger concern. I think this card's broken. And I believe that's it for the oh, and then the stone, of course. Always forget the stone. When it enters your field, put a Dragon Crest counter on Millium. I thought the stone was like, oh, the stone's going to have some weird janky force thing, like gain X life when it enters the field, but it's just put a Dragon counter on Millium, which is even... technically it's worse than, like, force do something, but it does what the archetype wants it to do, which is completely fine and reasonable. And I don't see you playing a blue-white Shockstone in anything that isn't Millium. I can't imagine you wanting to be go that hard on being blue-white if you're not the Millium deck. But I've been wrong before. I don't think I'm wrong about that one, though. That's it for the spoiler article, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with the next set next time.